Alrighty, howdy folks, Nick Alter here from Founder's Best Friend, and we are talking about the first stage of the Thrive Side framework today. And not only the first stage, but the very first step of the very first stage of the Thrive Side framework. And if you're watching this, you've signed up for basically a 5-day crash course on how we get right with our offering, what it is that, and how do we actually firm up what our offering is. And just to define that, what we mean is a product or a service. What we define as an offering, because frankly, it gets confusing when we're trying to say, product or service or some amalgamation of the two, right? And so we just combine that and say, here's an offering, here's what that is. And the first thing that we really dive into when we're talking about the existential stage, this first stage of the Thrive Side framework, and if anybody's unfamiliar with what the Thrive Side framework is, at this point, as you're watching this video, my recommendation is go ahead and pause this video. And there's a video preceding this that actually there's a couple of videos, but there's really just one that you need to watch that you should have been given, that you should have been supplied, and it explains what the Thrive Side framework is. So if that's true, go ahead and pause this and go watch that first, then come back to this, because this is a breakdown of the first section. That video actually is a breakdown of the entire framework as a whole and why we're leveraging this in the first place. Okay? So moving on and getting back to this idea of what is our first step, if you will, the first thing that we want to address as at this existential stage, this very, very beginning stage. And again, if we're in this stage, it's because we're ready to really start pursuing. It's like, hey, I see an opportunity and I want to flesh out, I want to articulate that opportunity into actionable go-to-market, basically architecture and strategy that we can execute, implement, however you want to describe that, into, reality, basically. And so where we're going to start here is the questions. And Simon Sinek describes the first, he has a whole book on this idea of starts with why. Why is one of the first questions that we want to answer, but it's not, in my opinion or estimation, it's not the question I always start with. The question I always start with is what, right? And because practically speaking, before we can even talk about what motivates us or what gets us excited about this, we have to know what it is, right? And what is actually, we're addressing multiple whats in this context. The first what, being what is it? What are we actually seeing as the opportunity, right? What do we see as our chance to take this forward? Also questions around not only what is it, but what do we want, right? And what do we want this to become? And so when we think about this idea of what, it's like, and we say what I want. And really, we're asking the question of where do I really want this to go at the end of the day? Because, you're about to commit to not weeks, not months, but years of effort to take something from concept into a market, right? And so if I'm about to commit years of my life to taking something from this idea, or even maybe just this general grand fantasy that I might have, and I want to bring that into reality, and I'm saying that in order to do that, that's going to be years of my life, I should be pretty darn clear on what I want before I really start going down this track, right? So again, what is it? What do we want? And then that should lead to this idea of who. That should be the second question, is who is this for? Who are we serving? Who is it that we want to address? On top of what market do we want to address? And there's that what question again, right? It's just, what is this? What do we want? What is this for? And then that should lead into this idea of who. Who is this for, right? That should actually just be a natural progression. And who is it that we want to have impact on? And so we can keep going down that path, that rabbit hole, so to speak, in order to eventually get to our why. Right. But I think that the other idea is that it's not just who do we want this for, but frankly, is that the same audience of who cares? Okay. And so it's saying, like, who cares about the problem you're solving? Who particularly cares enough to pay for the solution that you're bringing to the table? And is that in alignment with the who that you want to serve? And so, and the thing is you might say, well, no, of course it is, duh. But I mean, I hear you, and I would normally say, I mean, at first glance, I say, I totally, yeah, like, yeah, duh. But that's dangerous, because until we actually start going through the process of laying that out and fully articulating it, I've seen over and over and over and over again. And again, I've done hundreds, if not thousands of these experiences, and realizing that, wait a second, that's not always in alignment, right? And when it's not in alignment, then we're already, we've already failed the race. We've already lost before we even got out the gate. So we just want to be abundantly clear about that, because then the other thing is that we need that what question in that who question, and we need to be super clear on that, because then that actually then leads to our why. Why are we doing this? Why do you want to solve this problem? Why does this matter? Right? And then we get in, and by the way, I'm not saying that Simon's wrong in a lot of how, like, contextually of what he's describing. I feel like I'm picking on him. I'm not picking on him. Simon, you did something amazing there. I love that book. I highly recommend everybody go read that book. My point, though, is that it's just not the first question for me. It's not it's one of the things, and frankly, it's not even the very first thing that I start with when I say, what do we actually want to build? And the thing is who do we want to build it for? And then why do we want to, right? It's just that's the normal cadence I get into, because oftentimes when we're trying to answer the why, we get lost in context, because it's more about the practical application of that why to the what and the who, right? And by the way, there's other elements of facets of those questions, the what, the who, and even the why, as we progress throughout this process. Okay, so I'm only really gonna take it there. So that, and as you're really digging into today's course material, I just want to give you guys that perspective and enough of that grounding. Trying to think if there's anything else there that I really want to say about it, but I think that's good for you guys to start with, to say, and it gives you enough context to then really start digging in to what the course material itself starts to guide you through. Okay, so because really at the end of the day, we're wanting clarity about our audience, right? We want clarity around the right messaging and the product and the offerings itself. And this is the precursor to what comes after day 1, day 2, when we start getting into this concept of the uniquely better. Okay, so going from, just to recap, what questions, who questions, then the why questions. And again, you're going to keep those. Those will actually be building blocks for as we delve into what makes all of this uniquely better. Okay? All right, guys. Thanks. I look forward to what tomorrow brings and what you guys come up with today. All right. Take care.